Speaking of West Virginia, they pounded BYU 37-7. There's just a couple of things we want to hit on that I think are important. The Cougars were outrushed 336 yards to 67. 7 yards a carry for the other guys. We broke it all down on after further review, which you can watch anytime.
Sure.
On the,
if you missed it, go watch
BYU
it because
TV app.
we talked through and showed some things on video about what was going on defensively that we can't really do here. But make sure you go back and watch AFR if you want to know what was going on.
And what does everyone think of Jake Retzlaff? Go ahead and tell us on the live stream, and I'll get your thoughts here, Blaine. In his first start since junior college, he was 24 of 42, 210 yards, no interceptions, no touchdowns. He rushed 10 times for 26. He showed to me signs of life, mobile arm, live arm, mobile runner, moxie, some creativity. And this is not a knock on Keaton Slovis. Keaton Slovis is a veteran, well-tested, 11,000 yards and all these touchdowns. Jake is just different, and different I think is going to be really good down the road. Is different good as we sit here on this Tuesday looking at Iowa State?
Yeah, different didn't make any difference Saturday, right?
Right.
Because they still didn't score. Like in the game, the final score is 37-7, but did they score? They scored a garbage touchdown with 4 minutes left in the game or whatever it was with their seconds in. So that was a meaningless touchdown. During the time of the game when they needed to score, they had 0 points. And so there's some really great things. Like I'm not taking away from what Jake did. In his first appearance, the thing that I look for is, does this young guy take care of the ball at this level? Yeah. Is he going to turn it over? He's going to run around, try to make plays and force the ball in where he shouldn't force the ball. And he didn't do that. He was careful with the ball. I was looking to see, does his arm translate to this level? We saw him on film in junior college, but the spaces are smaller. The guys can break faster on D. Oh, he has all the arm strength he needs. He can run around. So his raw skill set on display gives me a great hope for down the road. But this is the thing it proved to me, and I keep saying this. Didn't matter who's playing quarterback, they still couldn't score.
Couldn't run, couldn't block.
Zero touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right? Until the end of that game. And remember, they had been on a 10-quarter drought. And that drought continued until the game was well in hand in this one. They finally get a touchdown. And so all of those things that we just said that we loved in Jake Retzlaff had no impact on the offense. Yeah. They didn't go rack up a bunch of yards either. They moved the ball in spurts, but they were inconsistent and they didn't finish drives. And that's been their problem, and especially in recent weeks. And so a lot of good things to take away from the way he played. A lot of hopeful good things for the future as he becomes the guy. But it didn't solve the problem that's been going on in the last couple weeks with the inability of this team to run the football and the inability to finish drives and score.
Let's get some reaction from our live streams. First of all, Christy is checking in from Maui on vacation watching the Wise Guys. It's cold and rainy here in Provo.
Yeah,
so
Christy, man.
We hope the beach is treating you well. And now on to some reactions. Joel says, Cougars are still on track to have the worst rushing game dating back to post-World War II. That is true. Ruthie, we love Retzlaff. He's a mover and a shaker.
Yeah, he is mobile.
Yeah,
and he's got a big arm. He's got a quick release. Like I said, a raw skill set. Look great. He's got some things that they can harness and do a lot of good things with. But you got to go back and go. Did they blow up did all of a sudden were they able to have 455 yards of total offense like the old BYU? Did they score any points? They didn't do any of those things.
Joel says, Jake the guy now, his team needs to get their heads right. Howard in from Anchorage says Jake was definitely a positive, quick decision, strong arm, good runner. I loved, if they're going to run that pass to the boundary and then the receiver catches it and runs upfield, I love that it gets to him faster. Yep. And that thing was noticeable.
Yeah, and I like the other thing you look for in young quarterbacks, when he did scramble, does he keep his head up and is he looking downfield? Or does he go through a quick progression and go, I'm just running this thing and tuck it and run? And he did the former, not the latter. Like, he kept his eyes downfield. He made a couple of really nice plays on the run. Yeah, I'm not throwing a wet blanket on Retzlaff. He was great, right? for a guy that's in there.
You're just painting some reality.
But what I'm just saying to folks is, yeah, he's a different style. He runs around. He's got a great skill set, but there's some things that need to be fixed on this offense for this offense to be better. And you know what it shows me? That Keaton Slovis wasn't the problem.
No.
Because you just changed the quarterback to a completely different style, and they still couldn't score.
Richard says the run game's not working because the O-line is not opening holes. That line has been surprisingly weak this year, and that certainly hasn't mattered who the quarterback was.
Right, and that to me is the biggest issue with this offense this year.
Read what David says.
Yeah, and David says, I understand the disappointment right now, but before the season started, I believed that BYU could get bowl eligible. That would be successful first Big 12 season. This is still possible. Go Cougs. And you know what? David's actually 100% right. We talked about this off the air and a little bit on the air. People forget the over-under that Vegas set was 4.5 wins. And so they're already past that. If they can get Iowa State at home and get to 6, then who knows if they play loose. It's funny. If you would have asked me 4 weeks ago, which is more likely of an upset at the end of the season, BYU going into Oklahoma State and beating Oklahoma State or getting Oklahoma at home, I would have said, no chance they're getting Oklahoma at home. Oklahoma is flying high. Yeah. And Oklahoma State, they're really down. They're not playing well. Well, that's reversed in the last 3 weeks. Oklahoma State's playing phenomenal, and Oklahoma doesn't look unbeatable. And would I be surprised if BYU got Iowa State Friday night? That wouldn't surprise me. They're an underdog, but a 6.5. And for some reason, BYU creates a lot more turnovers and takes care of the ball better at home.
Yeah, for sure.
They're undefeated in conference play at home, and they're defeated in conference play on the road. They haven't won a game on the road.
They've gotten pounded on the road.
Yeah.
But they've turned the ball over on the road.
They turn the ball over on the road, and they don't force as many turnovers. And then when they come home, they force turnovers, and they take care of the ball for some reason. And so that wouldn't surprise me at all for them to win. In fact, I expect them to win Friday.
Or Saturday.
Would I be surprised if they beat Oklahoma the following?
Not the way they've looked. Not the way the Sooners have looked.
I'm going to admit, I would be surprised, but I won't be flabbergasted. That's like not out of the realm of the possibility. I'd actually be flabbergasted if they beat Oklahoma State on the road, the way Oklahoma State's playing and the way BYU's playing on the road.
Nathan Crook, we see on the live stream. Glad to have you with us from Michigan tonight.
Yeah.
Glenn is on from the Philippines, loves home games. And we all love home games. BYU plays better.
The players love home games. Kalani loves home games.
And the last 2 games have been on the road, and they've been brutal. And now you got to come home for 2 in a row and a chance to kind of get some energy back, some momentum, play a little harder, a little crisper. And I like our chances on Saturday night. No one's going to – Iowa State's no paper tiger. They come in 5-4, but 4-2 in the league. They got wins against Oklahoma State, TCU, Cincinnati, and Baylor, and losses against Oklahoma and Kansas last week. They lost by a touchdown, but no one's coming in here to take a knee in the Big 12.
No. And from top to bottom, it's a whole different deal.
You should enter the field scared to death every time. Like, if it doesn't, every game requires their very best effort. If you go, hey, I think we got this one, you don't have this one. And you get punched right in the mouth.
Any team can beat any other team in this league if they don't take care of the ball. And then momentum builds when you're not taking care of the ball, and you get short fields and easy points. And any team in this league can beat any other team. Like, perfect case in point. BYU did a pretty good job. Like, BYU in that Texas Tech game pretty much seemed like they were handling them. Like, I never felt like, man, BYU's not going to. I felt like BYU had that game. And felt like they could compete and had the upper hand, and we're going to win that kind of all along. And they did, right? And TCU, they're on the road, and it's just like, what in the world is going on here? They can't, it's like they can't even play football. And then Texas Tech and TCU just played this last week, and Texas Tech wins.
Yeah.
At home.
It's hard
Texas
to figure
Tech
it
at
out.
home, right? And this league is interesting. Teams are so much better at home than they are on the road, which is not surprising. So I did want the one question about the offensive line where they're not opening holes. It's an interesting thing. We really took an in-depth look at the video the last couple of weeks and their inability to run it. You would be surprised if you had a chance to watch the All-22 and just watch the blocking of how much of a percent. How do I just see this? I want to say this right. The percentage of times that it is a mental error, like they're just not blocking the right people. And there are a few times when they get beat, they have bad leverage and a guy beats them. Like Texas's Yeah, when Paul Miley, who's really good, gets one-on-one on a reach block on Texas's 365-pound defensive tackle, that's a design flaw in my opinion. Yeah. You can't expect him to reach block a 365-pound dude. Nobody in the country reach blocks that guy. So there's a design failure, and he was in the backfield a bunch. You got to double that guy every play. Everybody does. So that's not an indictment on BYU's line. And there were a few times like they're leveraging wrong and they get beat. But there are so many times when we're looking at the front and we're going, okay, this has to be a Ringo call. There's 3 on the right. They have to slide right. And you see somebody make a call and 2 guys slide right and 1 guy slides left and a guy's completely like, it's not like he beat anybody. They didn't touch him.
Yeah.
We had one of those that we diagnosed and diagrammed on AFR tonight. And it's just like, there's way too many plays like that throughout the course of a game for BYU offensively to just go, oh, well, it has got to be fixed. And if the guys can't execute what you're wanting them to execute because mentally they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you might have to play a player with less talent that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And we've got a couple of questions we're going to deal with later in the show on the Cougar Board Question of the Week, which is just about what you're talking about. Iowa State averages 23.6 points a game. They allow 20.7. BYU averages 22.9, and they allow 26.9. You know what that tells me? They're about a possession apart from each other.
Yeah, and that's what the line is, right? And it seems to me like BYU matches up better against this type of team. So Iowa State for years in this conference, and again this year, hangs their hat on defense. This is a top 30 defense in the country, really. If you take a blending of all the metrics, it's a top 30 defense, which is, if you're a top 30 defense, you're really good defensively. They're physical, they're tough. It's the typical Midwest team that you think of. They're very Big Ten-like, you know what I mean? But they've struggled on offense, especially the last couple of years.
And they make mistakes.
And they continue to struggle on offense this year. And so here's what's happened with BYU. For BYU's offense, it doesn't seem to matter whether the defense is terrible or good. They struggle to move the ball.
Yeah.
But when the other team's offense is struggling, BYU's defense does a good job of shutting them down. Remember, BYU's taken some pretty good runners this year that came in that game averaging 6 to 7 yards a carry and held them to 3. So, I like the matchup. I like it at home. I like it at night. I like it that Iowa State hangs their hat on defense. Don't get me wrong. They're solid on offense, and they have athletes. They're balanced, but they're not crazy explosive like Kansas or TCU. So I think BYU's defense will rise to the occasion. They had a lot of mistakes Saturday. They were really struggling with being gap sound defensively against the run game. Didn't really, like, we watched a bunch of film today, Dave, and you were watching with us. There were a few times they got pushed around, which happens in a game, but it wasn't a massive they got pushed around. They were really, for the first time this year, out of alignment and out of assignment.
Yeah, you don't have to get pushed around when you're not around.
Right. When you're in the completely wrong place, doesn't matter if they push you. Right.
There's a question from David. We're going to hear from Kalani here in just a second. Then Austin Colley is going to join us live here in just a few minutes. David says, question. I always like a response that starts with the word question, because then
Right.
All right.
Here we go, David.
Better to play veterans who know what to do but are struggling, or play younger guys knowing that they will whiff it often but will learn fast?
So here's the question. If they're struggling because they're physically not good enough, that's a whole different story, because typically your veterans are the ones that, and you say they know what they're doing. The problem for BYU right now is some of the veterans are the ones that are making mental errors.
Yeah, a lot of them.
So they're not acting like veterans, right? If
you expect them to not do that.
So if that's the case, you might as well play a young up-and-comer that's going to make the same mistakes. Now, if the way you phrased it is, the veteran knows what to do, but they're struggling. The only case that would be they're struggling because they're physically not good. So if they're physically not as good as the guy behind them and they're not capable of competing, then they shouldn't even be in there in the first place.
But sometimes they are, at BYU especially, because maybe the guy who's young is back from a mission and trying to get his, is not ready for prime time. And sometimes, there are some linemen in there where you sit there and scratch your head and go, kind of thought you'd be better than that. and over and over and over. So maybe you throw a freshman in there instead of a junior transfer.
If it's a physical thing and you're just like, hey, they've gone downhill, they're out of shape, you play the young guy, right? If it's a mental thing, there's no excuse for a veteran to not mentally know what they're doing.
Right. No excuse. That doesn't mean they don't do that, but there's no excuse.
No, but I'm talking about over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, because everybody makes a mental error once in a while, even the best, right? Even Tom Brady occasionally would make a bad throw. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a veteran that's making the same mistakes over and over and over again. At some point, you just sit them.
Yeah,
you have to sit them.
I agree.
So,
Dr. Ketch says, hey, at West Virginia, they came out super pumped after halftime. Kalani has a way of doing that, including Kalani, but it dissolved in about a minute. What up? I'll tell you what up. A holding call on a kickoff return.
Yeah.
So instead of a touchdown, you're back starting at your 10-yard line, first possession out of the break. And as you see on AFR tonight, it was a holding call on Isaiah Glasgow that didn't have to happen. It was behind the play, and that was just a gut punch and a momentum changer. And you got to know Kalani was in there firing up the troops.
Yeah.
Go out there and represent. They go out and they represent, and everybody did a great job on that kickoff return, including Marion, who showed off his speed and went down for the touchdown.
We finally got to see him.
But a holding call said,
finally got to see him turn it on and go.
Hold everything. You guys aren't doing anything tonight.
And it's so discouraging because that holding call started off as a really good leverage block, exactly where he was supposed to be. And then as the return man, Marion, went by and was now passed, grabbed onto the sleeve and threw the guy on the ground and got a holding call. It had no impact on the play whatsoever. Like, there was no reason to do it. And those are the types of plays where you're just like, ugh. And you'll remember a couple weeks ago, the peel back blindside block on the interception return that went to the 9-yard line against Texas and could have changed momentum. And it's like, why are you even throwing that block? Like, that player has zero chance to make a play on the return guy. So don't even touch him. Don't risk anything.
No.
Don't touch him. So there's been some of those this year too. Those are mental errors.
Here's a question from Les. Hey guys, and Les is joining us from New Mexico. Right. I'm seeing that this is not a being in the Big 12 problem. Many of the difficulties we're seeing were showing up in earlier games. We've been through the bye week. Things didn't get fixed. Is this turning into a program culture problem? Probably they did have all those issues in the earlier games, but they were playing less superior teams and they won those games. Yeah, they didn't play great against Sam Houston and beat them. They didn't play great against Southern Utah and beat them. They played good enough at Arkansas, and that was a good victory. But I think what we're seeing the last 2 weeks is why there's a bit of panic in the land, is that those problems, while unfixed, are now being totally exposed by teams who are really good.
Yeah. They're
and that's why you're 35-7 or 6 or 37-7.
Yeah, the running backs you're playing right now, for instance, if you're out of your gap, these guys have great vision. Like, if I'm in the cutback lane and there's supposed to be somebody in the A, B, C, and D gap and somebody's not in the C gap, guess where I'm running? I'm running the C gap and I'm getting 15 yards or more, right? And you might get away with that playing inferior talent. And the problem is when you're playing against Neal from Kansas, it's not a 5-yard run. It's 65 yards for 6 when you're out of your gap,
and
right?
Those runners went, Saturday were all over the place.
Now, and here's the thing. We got to keep in mind, Neal was held way below his average. And West Virginia, we got to have a little bit of perspective on defense here. They had 285 yards rushing the week before. They're one of the top rushing teams in the country. If BYU would have held them to 200 yards or 225, I actually would have been happy with that. And everybody probably be going, "Oh, they just gave up to." I said, but that's what they do, right. and they're good at it, and that's what they do against everybody.
346, that was over the top.
But 346 was like, okay, what is going on? That's 140 too much, right? But I would have been fine with 200 against that team.
Sure.
Which I would never be okay with anybody but Air Force being over 200 in the old Mountain West, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different level of football. And if you're playing, not this year because they're playing a freshman quarterback, but if you're playing Texas Tech over the last couple of years when they have NFL caliber quarterbacks, I'm okay if those guys throw for 400 yards, just not 600, right? Because teams are going to score in this league. And we've been saying this since before this season. this defense can play great and give up 28 to 30 points a game. Play great. That's what happens in this league. And you have to score in the mid-30s to win. And BYU's offense, and the defense has been pretty solid for the most part. This last week was a little bit of a step back.
Yeah.
And you know, we got to give them the benefit of the doubt because they've bounced back when they've had a rough game, and they've played really well. And they've created turnovers as good as anybody in the country. So I'm not that much on the defense other than they did some bonehead things this week over and over again, a few players that really cost them. But the offense, this is not just this year. This stretches into last year, and the defense that just gave up 37. What if BYU's offense scored 21 in this game? Do you think, I'm asking you folks out there, what if BYU's offense actually had some drives and sustained some drives and scored 21 in that game? Do you think that West Virginia football team would score 37?
Well, it's hard to say because they just scored whenever they wanted, but momentum would have been a little bit different.
Momentum changes.
The BYU would have felt a little bit different.
And the pressure on them is different when they've got to come out and match scores. And if you keep up with them, they're feeling like they've got to score. That offense stepped out there, West Virginia, and I guarantee you the guys are like, just, you know what? Just play our game. Just run the ball. We don't even have to throw it. We don't even need to score another. Hey, we're up 14. We don't even need to score again, and we're going to beat this team because this team can't score. It's a whole different feel. Yeah. And if BYU's scoring 21, they probably win the time of possession battle because they weren't that far off as it was. If they were finishing drives, they would have had the ball longer. That's fewer possessions for West Virginia. I promise you, if BYU scores 21, they do not score 37. It's impossible. And BYU might still lose that game, but they might lose it 28 to 21 or 24 to 21, and we'd be going, dang, they played well on the road, but you lose 37 to 7, partly because the defense has a bad game assignment-wise, but mostly because the offense cannot score. That is the main problem right now.
But if the defense that played Texas and gave up 35 points went to West Virginia, it could have been a different result because they actually played good in that game, but they were all over the place.
Yeah, and 35 again in this league, 35 against Texas, not bad. And that was with an offense that wasn't producing.
Yeah, and they had a new quarterback, and we got after him a little bit, but we just couldn't get any points. So many things to fix. Les, that was a good question. We got more comments coming, and Austin Colley's going to join us. We'll listen to Kalani's comments.
Obviously, disappointing from last weekend. There's a few bright spots. Guys played hard, not hard enough, not physical enough as a team. Thought West Virginia brought a lot of the aggressiveness and physical play, and we weren't able to match it. So, got to have that fixed by the time we take the field Saturday night against Iowa State. Obviously, there's a lot of errors, a lot of things to improve on, but. Looking forward to this week and today to get ready for Iowa State. Really good team, coach. I mean, it's when you see what Matt Campbell does as a coach, you see why the program is known for their toughness, and that's in all three phases. That's the thing that stands out. They play the game with a certain level of toughness, and I'm looking forward to getting our guys to answer it because you can see it on film. So. I think they have, looking at their team, they can run the ball. QB can run. They have tons of talent, big physical as a team on offensive side. On defense, probably one of the better defensive backfields I've seen. Really good corners. I think one's a projected high draft pick. They have a lot of great players on defense, and I think they have. I think they're conference best defense for a reason. So. We've got to be ready to play against them. We got to be ready to find a way to put points on the board and have our guys execute at a high level for all three phases, so we can have a chance to win this game. Excited that we're home in front of our crowd. Looking forward to that being an advantage, but in the meantime, we're gonna have to fix some things on the field. Looking forward to getting that done. And so, really, in terms of. Have tons of respect for what Matt Campbell does as a coach and how he runs his program and I've said this about every coach in the Big 12. I've been around in conference meetings and things like that, and he's a leader in that group, but also just being so kind and gracious enough to give me time and extend his hand as a friend. I've had opportunity to get to know all the coaches, and I think they do a great job running their programs. And he's a guy that's sought after for a lot of different jobs and chooses to stay at Iowa State for a reason. And you can see that these guys play really hard for him. And I like the brand of football that they play. So looking forward to the matchup, and hopefully we can get our guys to play at that high level and make it a battle.
Put up our game day. You want to read our game day plug for Saturday night under the lights?
Yeah, where are we here? Anyhow, I
We're
can
on
just tell
page
you what
3.
it is. I can actually tell you where it is. It's this Saturday, 8 Eastern. Make sure you're with us. So 6 o'clock we'll hit the air. You and I will be over there. like 4 o'clock, right?
Yeah,
It's a long day. Got a 2-hour pregame show in store for you. It's going to be Brian Logan, David Nixon, Spencer Linton, me, and we're going to bring Bronson Kafusi. We had Austin last couple of weeks.
And we had Harvey
Lange this last week, which was great. This week we're going to roll Bronson Kafusi in with us for our 2-hour pre and 1-hour post-game show. The game's at 10:15 Eastern, 8:15 Mountain on ESPN on the mothership. The live post-game would be back on BYU TV as soon as it's over. So make sure you join us on BYU TV for the pre and post-game shows and watch that game on ESPN this Saturday.